Good evening, boys and ghouls. Welcome to Where the Scary Things Are. I'm your host, Monster Mash Ken. Oh, we're not recording. Hold on.
It says you're live.
Yeah.
I can see it's live.
No. Good evening, boys and ghouls. Welcome to Where the Scary Things Are. I'm your host, Monster Mash Ken, and with me is your co-host, the Mistress of Darkness, the Queen of Fright, the Lady of the Night, Muse. How you doing tonight, lady?
I'm good hanging out with you guys. It's always a blast. And I don't know, I've already been laughing so hard. And like my face is like maxed and the muscles are like stretched out.
That's awesome because we flip flopping this show. So if you caught our YouTube show, we did our interview first. So when you're listening to the podcast, it's gonna sound normal to you. But yeah, we're already an hour in and we're feeling good. So my question for you tonight it's a good one. Have you ever I'm assuming that you live in an apartment or you have close neighbors or something like that? Is that right?
Yeah, watching now the movie we're gonna be talking about. I'm like, great, because we're talking
Yeah.
about living and now I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know about going and seeing these new apartments.
So tell me about the worst apartment story that you have.
Oh my God. Oh, so many. We don't have enough time. Apartments my whole life. I've never lived in a house. So I have quite a few. We had some really horrible neighbors. I mean, literally like, parties, raging parties. Like we had these we actually lived more in a townhouse a couple years ago, probably back in 2015. It's kind of the closest thing I've ever been to a house, but it was still pretty much an apartment. It's still attached. And we had these neighbors, and I'm not going to say the guy's name, but because with my luck, he's probably listening. But he literally hates my mom's guts. He hates our guts. I know he does. They used to have these raging parties. They had this actual Halloween party one night. They literally were putting up flyers all over the city for it. So you can just imagine. Just everybody was everywhere. I mean, the walls were shaking. They had a real DJ down there. It was crazy. But I mean, these guys were like absolute nightmare neighbors. I mean, their dog was pooping on our lawn, and it was we were about to get in trouble because you had to like pick up after your dog. That was like the regulations of the complex, and we were gonna get fined and cited and stuff by the complex, and it was just is a mess. There's just so much there, but yeah, total nightmare neighbors. I mean, nobody trying to brainwash us or anything, but I mean, more just like you want to kill these guys like next door, like strangle them.
Well, I'm sure. I've been blessed and I haven't lived. I live in my own house now, but I've lived in apartment complexes, and the one thing that bothered me the most is you can literally hear everything on the
Yes.
other side.
Oh my gosh,
I
yes.
mean, like everything. So,
Right.
yeah, no
Been
fun.
there, been there.
Yeah, no fun. So anyway, also joining us is the man, the myth, the legend, Chris the Creature ZC from ZC Emporium for B Movies. How you doing tonight, young man?
I am in such a good mood. For the first time in 9 months, because of this COVID-19 thing, I actually went to get my teeth checked and no cavities. And so I have a lot of dental anxiety. So no cavities today. You can't imagine how high I'm walking on cloud nine.
Well, you drink all the Mountain Dew, Baja Blast,
Yeah,
and
I do.
whatnot.
I
So,
do.
but you know what's funny is I think I have a high tolerance for pain, but when it comes to the
Oh
dentist,
yeah.
I just don't know what. And I always tell them like, listen, I'm not a pussy,
Yeah.
but I just don't like you poking around in there, and I can't. You got to keep your mouth open, like
Yeah.
Maybe just hold your mouth open while I do this to you, and
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks, but
Yeah.
no thanks. I'm out. It's funny you bring up dentist stuff because I woke up this morning and my gums were like puffy back there. I think I was sleeping with my jaws clenched because I was
Oh.
thinking of Florida, and all the crap that they're going through.
Ah.
So from the depths of Florida, the horror behind PromoteHorror.com, Horror. What's up, my friend?
Oh, yes. I am coming to you guys live from the coronavirus capital of the world. So, yes. Wondering what in the hell Florida man or woman is going to do next because add the craziness of Florida plus the coronavirus. Yeah, it's no surprise it's not going away. And you know that famous line, Wolfman got nards? I wonder if any of our politicians got it to do something because we're just dying down here and it doesn't matter. I don't believe any of them, and we're just gonna have this forever. So you can find me all the time right here.
Well, listen, we are very excited to be here with our audience tonight. We have a fantastic show as always planned. Please follow us on social media at Scary Things Pod on Twitter and on Facebook. Please hit that like button on YouTube if you like the show. Follow us on YouTube so you get the alerts when we go live. We want to give a special shout out, as always, to Isaac Thorne for doing our opening intro, which you won't hear on the YouTube channel, but one day I'll figure that out and you'll be able to hear it. But you do hear it on the podcast. So thank you, Isaac, for doing that. And you can follow him on Twitter at Isaac Thorne. Very talented individual. Yeah, very talented. So tonight we'll be talking about a really cool movie, as Muse mentioned before. It's called One Bedroom or 1BR. I believe it was just released this week. Very cool stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I cannot wait to hear Chris's review of this movie later on. But we will be speaking to the director, David Marmor, the producer, Alok Mishra, and Naomi Grossman, who had a critical role in the movie. And you know Naomi Grossman from American Horror Story and of several other horror films. Very awesome actress indeed. But yeah, I'm so excited to get into it. I'm not going to lie, I am 3 beers in already, but what's one more? So I'm going to crack this bad boy open for the Fear Beer of the Week. And this is a great one here. This one is called Beer Hates Astronauts. And I don't know if you guys can see, you might not be able to see this cool artwork here. But it's got like this really cool artwork. And I was like, I am so getting that. It's all this stuff going on in the background. So I definitely had to go with that beer. It's an IPA, 7.8 ounce alcohol. And Citra hopped IPA from the future. So I'm traveling in the future, baby. I've advanced. And as far as the horror movie Flashback, I got a good one for you. And I know Muse and I started this show. We've celebrated our year anniversary not too long ago or whatnot. And we may have already said this maybe on this date, but Day of the Dead, this movie came out this day on June 30th, 1985. I believe I was 4 years old. Great movie indeed. You know, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. You got all these great zombie movies, but Day of the Dead was awesome. Zombies rule the world except for a small group of scientists and military personnel who reside in an underground bunker in Florida, of all places. The scientists are using the undead in gruesome experiments, much to the chagrin of the military. Finally, the military finds their men have been used in scientist experiments and banish the scientists to the caves that house the living dead. Unfortunately, the zombies from above ground have made their way into the bunker. So, a great movie. It's a definitely must if you haven't seen it. I don't remember the last time. It was a long time ago, but I got to watch it again. It was cool that it popped up. Came out today on June 30th. With that said, we're going to hop right into the Sinister Six with Muse.
Okay, so I love that you mentioned Day of the Dead because that's actually my favorite Romero movie. So I love that. I was just talking about that on Twitter. So yeah, just so many great moments from that movie. So okay, so on to the Sinister Six. So we're going to be talking about one bedroom and some crazy stuff that happens to this one young woman as she's renting an apartment. So I thought I'm going to give you guys my top 6 favorite horror movies surrounding apartments. And so I call it the apartment horror. And anybody that's lived in apartments long enough feels this on every level, I'm sure. But the first movie we actually talked about a little bit earlier in the interview is Rosemary's Baby. We know this is one of my top 5 favorite horrors. I've mentioned this a few times, but this had to make the list because this is definitely one of the biggest horror movies surrounded by the premise of the setting being in an apartment building. And just to give you guys a refresher, it's about a young wife who comes to believe that her offspring is not of this world. Rosemary Woodhouse, played by Mia Farrow, and her struggling actor husband Guy, played by John Cassavetes, who I love, moved to a New York City apartment building with an ominous reputation and odd neighbors. Odd is really being polite here. These are some, as we start to really see the story unfold, they're a whole lot more than odd. So their names are Roman and Minnie Castevet, definitely nightmare neighbors, played by the awesome Sydney Blackmer and Ruth Gordon. So when Rosemary becomes pregnant, she becomes increasingly isolated, and the diabolical truth is revealed only after Rosemary gives birth. And most of us know that truth, but I won't play a spoiler in case somebody out there has not seen this classic. Roman Polanski, 1968. You got to check this one out. It's a classic. It's one of my favorites. So that brings me to the second movie, which is a little bit newer, but still a pretty big classic, and definitely should be on every horror fan's checklist for movies they should see. It's The Sentinel from 1977. And it centers around a New York City model with a troubled past named Allison Parker. She decides to make some changes in her life and breaking up with her boyfriend, Michael, who's played by Chris Sarandon. And if you know Chris Sarandon, he actually plays Jerry Dandridge in Fright Night. So this is an earlier role for him. So that's pretty cool. But Allison relocates to an apartment in a brownstone building where the only other tenant is a withdrawn blind priest, played by John Carradine. After experiencing strange occurrences, Allison begins to realize why this holy man is present. Apparently, the building has an evil presence that must be kept in check at all costs. Has a great twist ending, and if you have not seen this one, you need to see it. It is definitely a must-see for horror fans. Number 3, I went off kind of like the beaten path here a little bit. And this is actually one of my favorite in the series. I'm a big Paranormal Activity fan. And me and Horror have talked about this many times. But I am a huge fan of Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. And I believe this is the 5th movie in the series. And it actually centers around a different group of characters rather than the family that is featured in the first 3 films. There's that kind of like connection in the first 3 films, but Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, goes off in a different direction and centers on a group of teenagers named Jesse and Hector, who they're just looking forward to a carefree summer. They've graduated, or actually Jesse has, but the murder of a neighbor leads to a terrifying encounter with the supernatural. So after they break into their neighbor's apartment, Jesse and Hector find a collection of ritualistic art and other bizarre items. So Jesse takes the journal of occult writings and soon after finds a strange mark on his arm. His subsequent erratic behavior leads Jesse's friends and family to the realization that he is possessed. And there's a whole backstory here. It does connect with the other 3 movies. It seems like you're kind of wondering how they're going to tie it in, but they do. And I love this one. I thought the humor in this one was really great too. I really love the chemistry of the cast on set on this one. And it's just definitely one of my favorites. I know I'm definitely a sequel girl, so I know I'm biased, but I loved this one. So that brings me to my 4th movie. And still, obviously, we're going to we're going to journey over to Chicago with Poltergeist 3, another sequel. Big shocker. You know, I love my sequels. So Poltergeist 3, I know that horror fans out there, some love and some hate this movie. Some people thought this was an absolutely horrible sequel. I loved it. But it's basically centering still on Carol Ann. Unfortunately, her family is not in the picture in this one. She is sent to live in Chicago with her Uncle Bruce, played by Tom Skerritt, who I love, and her Aunt Pat, played by Nancy Allen. She's also a great actress. But this doesn't mean that she's escaped the apparitions that have haunted her in the past. So when she starts experiencing terrifying visions, her school psychologist believes they're figments of her imagination. And I remember I've watched this movie so many times. I hated her psychologist. He was such a jerk, but he was supposed to be. So he was such a great actor in this part. But so this becomes hard to believe, when ghostly foes start inhabiting the mirrors in her relative's high-rise apartment. A lot of really cool special effects with mirrors here. And we all know in horror movies, when there's a mirror involved, run, get the hell out. It's not good. I'm still to this day, horror movies have ruined mirrors for me. I'm just, I fucking hate them. I'm like, my friends and I used to play Bloody Mary when we were like young. I just totally have been traumatized by mirrors since I was just a kid. So definitely horror movies have exploited that. I love it because I love to be scared, but this really plays up on that fear. There's a lot of great ones out there, but Poltergeist 3 is definitely a great one with mirrors, and also of course fitting the apartment theme here. So the 5th movie is you knew there was gonna be a found footage in here because I love my found footage. And so I'm going with Quarantine. So this is a remake from the Spanish movie REC, or REC. And this stars Jennifer Carpenter as the reporter Angela. She plays a reporter named Angela, and her cameraman Scott. They're doing a story on night shift firefighters for a reality TV program. So a late night distress call takes them to a Los Angeles apartment building where the police are investigating a report of horrific screams. So the TV team and emergency workers that find an old woman who just suddenly out of nowhere attacks them with her teeth bared and everything, the whole nine. It's crazy. But what's more, Angela and company find that the building has been sealed by the CDC workers. So this is never a good sign. So Quarantined, also a timely movie because a lot of us are still in quarantine or wish we were and wish everybody else was too because everything's out of control again. But so that's when stuff really kicks off, when they get sealed in there into the apartment building and we start to see the story unfold. But this was just one of those claustrophobic found footage films where you're like, oh my God, I would just be freaking out. You just don't know what's going to happen from minute to minute. Definitely a great found footage movie. Even if you're not a fan of found footage, I would recommend this one. Also the Spanish version as well, Rec as well. That was also great. My last movie is an absolute cult favorite for me, Shivers by David Cronenberg from 1975. And this movie is so twisted. I love it. It is just totally just one of those really crazy, just off the rails, demented movies. I love this one. I don't know how people are probably going to see me after this, after hearing the synopsis of this one, but I love this movie. It's actually still streaming on Tubi TV, I believe. But it centers on around a scientist who's living in this like posh apartment complex. And it opens with him slaughtering this teenage girl. Then he kills himself. So right away, you're like, what in the hell is happening? So investigators discover that the murderer had been carrying on these like experiments involving deadly parasites. This is definitely one of those great body horror films as well. So a character emerges in this film named Roger St. Luke, played by Paul Hampton. He's a doctor who's living in the building because they're kind of like on their own island. They have their own doctors, they have their own people for whatever, their own dentists, I'm sure. And since we talked about that earlier, and they're kind of cut off from everybody. They're like in this like it's almost like a commune, but it's this really ritzy high-rise apartment building. And so they have their own healthcare specialists and everything. And he's got a nurse named Nurse Forsyth, played by the absolutely stunning Lynn Lowry, who I absolutely love. So they realize that the parasites are on the loose, and these parasites are attacking fellow tenants. There's some great gore in this. Definitely you're cringing. You're like, oh my God, you know. And apparently those who become hosts for these parasites turn into erotically obsessed maniacs, which I loved. And they pass the bugs on through violent sex. So this is definitely one of those movies where you're like, what is happening? I love this movie. I could watch it on repeat, like again and again and again. It's just, it totally horrified me. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it. But this is Cronenberg. This is like my favorite movie by David Cronenberg, and he's made some great ones. So I'm going to swing back around, and I'm coming after you guys. So I'm going to start with Ken this time. And I'm going to ask him, do you have any favorite horror movies that take place in an apartment, or maybe with some nightmare neighbors or something like that?
I was trying to. I didn't know what you were going to ask, and I
would. Coming.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. All I could think about was the David Cronenberg movie, and you just watching it and then watching it again. That's all that stuck in my mind.
That is just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I just go back to the film that we watched not too long ago. What was it called? The New Zealand, where she stuck a quarantine movie. What's it called? We just reviewed it not too long ago. Housebound, right? Housebound,
Oh,
and
Housebound.
yeah.
Definitely.
So
Crazy neighbors.
yeah. So that one kind of, I mean, obviously it wasn't a neighbor per se, but the guy lived down the street or whatever, and she's trying to break in his house. But that just popped in my mind right away. And I think most of the movies that come to mind have been, if it's a haunted house type thing, it's its own separate house. But yeah, that was the first movie that popped in mind. So I'm not going to help you out this time. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just like hearing your guys' feedback because I know that there's tons that I probably missed. So it could be Nightmare Neighbors too, because I know, I was kind of like, are there like what?
The Burbs. There you go. The Burbs.
I was waiting for you.
Yeah. What am I thinking? I'm 3 beers in. The Burbs is the neighbor movie of the best one of all time. Yes. But I'm sure Chris is going to got something crazy. What do you got, Chris?
2 of them come immediately to mind. Repulsion, another Polanski one. You mentioned Rosemary's Baby, but Repulsion was sort of a one-act play with Catherine Deneuve in a very deteriorating performance. But didn't we talk about Bite on the show?
We did. Yep.
Yeah. And you remember her apartment in the apartment building, and it became like a cocoon type thing, and eventually that whole apartment building is quarantined too. And but that was an apartment horror gore fest as well. So those are the two to come immediately to mind, and I'm sure as soon as I pass it to Haro, 5 more will come to mind.
Right?
Well, these movies happened in apartments, but they're not really themed around it. But they're obviously big time horror movies, and that's Candyman.
Yes,
Child's
I almost
Play.
said that. Yes, I love it.
Maybe Candyman was probably a little bit more involved with the apartments and so forth, but definitely Candyman. And Child's Play, the first one
Yep.
happened in an apartment. I mean, it's not, that woman, the babysitter gets thrown right out the window. So,
Boro is in my head, dude. I think Boro's put some cameras in my house because I had Child's Play written down, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna save that for. I know somebody's gonna say that. I know somebody's
Yeah,
gonna.
and I know a recent one that you saw, you mentioned, I think on one of your other Sinister Six, is Under the Shadows.
Yes, yes,
The
yep.
great foreign film right there. That was in an apartment building in that setting across the world.
I was waiting for one of you guys to say Ghostbusters. There's some apartment scenes in there, but it doesn't center around apartments. It just, some of the scenes happen to take place, some of the characters live in apartments and stuff like that, but it's more focusing on what the guys are actually doing. So yeah, there's so many good ones. I was kind of like, wait a minute, are there any? Because it just seems like Ken said, a lot of haunted house. But yeah, I love your guys' choices, and that's my Sinister Six for the week. So passing it on back to Ken there.
Yeah, well done. Definitely goes with what the subject matter of the movie, One Bedroom, which we'll get into later. But yeah, it caught me off guard there. I couldn't think of it. Even as Chris and Horo mentioned theirs, I was still trying to think. But I think The Burbs is definitely one of the. I mean, obviously it was a horror comedy, if it's even horror at all. The scariest.
It is. I say it is.
Well, the scariest part to me was the Exorcist scene. As they showed footage, like I remember, I think I said I was scared to even watch that part. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite movies, not just horror, but one of my favorite movies. Speaking of horror, let's get into what remakes have pissed horror off this week, or maybe not. Take it away, horror.
All right. So if you got a clue at the beginning, I said Wolfman got nards. So we're going to be talking about Monster Squad 1987. I know Ken's excited about this one.
Oh, you're damn right.
And the thing is here, this has not been remade yet. And, when I was kind of thinking about this one, I was kind of thinking this is actually a curious one, because this one is one that's possibility of a remake or a possibility of a sequel. Now, both ideas have been floated out there. And, I got lucky. If you guys haven't seen it, Wolfman Got Nards documentary was out about 2 years ago. And it was at the festival that I always go at. So I actually got to spend some time. Andrew Gower was there. And I interviewed him, but also got to hang out with him. And, they did talk about doing a sequel, actually. And, he said he wouldn't be objecting to a remake. But he kind of leaned more towards wanting a sequel and developing certain things here and there. So I'm going to kind of think of it more of a remake, since that's kind of the conversation here. But this is a definitely interesting movie because, we're over 30 years now in, and there's still hopes. There's still a huge fan base. And if you watch that documentary, you'll see that fan base. And that's a terrific documentary. And if you love the Monster Squad, I definitely recommend you guys check that out. But anyway, let's kind of dive into this from a remake kind of standpoint here. And if you don't know, this is, the basic way to sum this up. This movie is a young group of kids. They love monsters and so forth. And they kind of, obviously usually it's a whole fantasy thing, but they actually get entwirled in having to solve a case. Monsters come to life, and they form a squad, or they give themselves a squad name, and go out and fight some creatures here. So I guess, one of the things when they talked about doing a remake is the timing of it. Obviously they did the documentary, and one of the reasons they did it is it just seems timely. We've had a lot of 80s remakes over the last couple of years, and a lot of films about young kids and coming of age stories. We've seen a lot of movies and remakes in that kind of realm. So it's kind of shocking that they haven't done a remake of this movie based on those themes. I know some of us are might be a little tired of those kind of themes now. I mean, they've been done and they're still constantly being done. We still have shows going on in those themes. But, you know, it's a sign of where we are in cinema. And so it is a little shocking that this one hasn't been done, but that might be a good thing for some people. Let's talk a little bit about the kids. Obviously, I'm not going to go through and do a whole cast here of kids. It's really hard to do. It's always fun when they do casting for kids and being able to find gems out there. One I mentioned in a movie that did Becky. She's a little bit older now, but it's Lulu Wilson. She's probably too old for this movie unless they did an older cast. But finding a gem like that and seeing her in some of the older movies, seeing in some of the movies that she first did and now, and seeing how far she comes is pretty cool. So certainly they have an opportunity whenever you do a movie like this to find some young gems there. And I know one of the things that I don't want though is some of the casting for the kids of It and Stranger Things and so forth. Basically because they've done it, we're familiar with their faces now, and I think it's a little much. You know, some of them have been in different movies and we've seen them a lot. Some of them are still obviously doing Stranger Things. And I think if they did a remake, you know, let's fresh faces do it. Let's let, you know, some new kids that aren't recognizable. And again, you know, it's an age thing too. Maybe not all of them fit the bill here, but I don't want to see, you know, too many kids that we've seen before. I think if they did that, let's bring in some fresh faces and let that go. Obviously, the second big part of it is monsters, and I'm sure Ken has lots to say about the monsters in here. So I won't go too far in it, but you know, the interesting thing here is that, you know, when you first look at this movie, you think, oh, those are the Universal monsters, but they're not. They couldn't really say that they were. They didn't have licensing, and they very creatively worked their way around it. So everybody kind of knew who they were and knew what they were based on, but they never really said they were. So they kind of took their own form here. It was very suggestive and everything. And I think I forgot. I think it was maybe the creature from the Blue Lagoon, or they didn't really mention him by name in the movie. He's just kind of there. So you know, when we revision this, do we want to use the same monsters? Do we want to maybe add them and add some others? You know, maybe like the Bride of Frankenstein. Do we want to create our own monster to kind of throw in there with that? You know, how new do you want to make it? Do you want to even stick with that universe now? You know, Universal is trying to bring back that universe. So here's another reason. Do you do a remake now because they're trying to bring back that universe of monsters? Is it timely to bring back this cast of characters? Or do a whole monster squad and invent your own monsters? Do you want to do that? Obviously, some in this movie have a bigger role than others. You know, you'd almost have to have Dracula and Wolfman. But maybe some of the others, maybe you don't. Maybe you switch it up with, you know, Frankenstein is kind of their friend. Maybe one of the other ones is their friend. You know, lots of different directions and so forth to go and with the monsters. One thing which I think would maybe be phased out now and maybe can do it different is, you know, if you remember right, they kind of go through this whole, you know, 100 years amulet kind of thing and get zapped back in time and forth. You know, at the beginning they go through like a portal, and at the end they go through a portal. Maybe there's a better way to do that now, or maybe you come up with a total different reason why these monsters are here. I would say if there was one change now, I really think that really fit back then, and you can see that kind of theme going on in other movies back then. But I think if you were to do that and maybe set it in more of our time period now, maybe we come up with a whole different reason why the monsters are here. And again, and another theme here that you can do is that was kind of a kid-friendly thing here, almost a horror comedy in a way. You know, do you want to make this darker? Do you want to make these, you know, monsters really, really scary? Do we want to go to that, or do we want to really stay with the coming of age kid theme thing here? Different ways we can go there. Let's see. And obviously, one other thing is the last fight scene. You know, last week we talked a lot about fight scenes, and you know, when I was looking back at this movie, this actually has a really fun fight scene in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of the movie. Maybe not as brutal as some of the fight scenes we referenced last week, but definitely a fun one here. You got to see the kids go off against the different creatures and so forth. So again, make your own fight scene. I guess it depends on what kind of characters you have here, but a lot of wiggle room here. Do you want to kind of keep it in a hilarious way that the kids kind of stumble on beating these monsters, or do we want to make it a serious drag out fight? But I definitely think that we have a open door here to have a nice, fun fight to end this movie. So with that, I'll throw it to you guys, and I will let Ken go first because I know he wants to comment on the monsters here.
Yeah, I'm jumping out of my seat here, man. I'm like, come on, just shut up already. Let me go. So I got to back up a little bit. Yes, you mentioned something about fan base. Not too long ago, I think maybe in January or February, probably February. In New York City, there's a small theater I go to. It's called the Roxy, and it's underground, literally underground, in a really swanky, nice hotel. And this company that I buy all my cool posters from, Bottleneck Gallery, they put on old movies. They did The Goonies, they did Night of the Creeps, and they did Monster Squad. And the turnout was incredible. And it only seats so many people. And the screen is not huge like a real movie theater. It's like probably like a 90-inch screen TV type thing, but it's a theater. It's really nice, really cool. And I absolutely love Monster Squad to the fullest. Like I don't know if I'd put it in like my top 20 or anything like that in movies all time, but it's definitely up there. I love it. It does have a good following. Great that you brought up it was Universal Monsters or renditions of them. Obviously you have the Dracula and the Mummy, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, the creature from the Black Lagoon. But they couldn't really say that. Everybody wanted to be Rudy. Rudy was the man with his leather jacket. He was just probably like this 15-year-old kid and whatnot, but he was so cool, and I'm pretty sure he committed murders in that movie. But yeah, anyway, that's neither here nor there. As far as like, I'm thinking as you're talking, like, what could they do now? Now, you look at things like Stranger Things, and Stranger Things, I think, is kind of along those lines of what they're doing now. And I love Stranger Things so much. And Muse knows this. I was like, Muse, stop what you're doing and watch this show. God damn it. What are you doing with your life? And I love Stranger Things. I like them all. And they've introduced a new type of monster, and which is pretty cool. It kind of worked. So I kind of think they may have beat the punch, for all these remakes that are being done. You look at Goonies. Goonies is a lot like the Monster Squad. I think that one of these two movies is going to be remade or have a sequel, I guess. Probably not Goonies. Maybe that's going to be remade. But I'm wondering which one comes first. But it's going to be one of the two because we're all, Chris, you're a little bit older, but I'm sure you remember watching these movies that come out. But I watched this when I was a kid, and I was like, I want to be part of this squad, and the little outcast kids, and the one cool kid, and whatnot. But as far as monsters go, I would love to see what they come up with. Maybe it's something where they get transported into the portal, and they have to go back into that time or something like that. Kind of like a Waxwork type thing. Remember that movie Waxwork where they go into the sets? And I loved Waxwork. But I love Monster Squad. Great topic, Horo. I'm curious to see what Muse and Chris have to say. So Muse, what do you think?
Well, Ken stole my answer. I was gonna say, they kind of, they beat. I think Stranger Things beat them.
Yeah.
We kind of already seen that. I mean, to me, that is kind of like your modern day Monster Squad, and it's awesome. And I have finished the season. I even got my husband hooked on the show. We love it. We can't wait. We're sitting here waiting on pins and needles for the next season. But the one thing that I kind of would like to see, I'd like to see it darker. I want to see something more R-rated. I know it's kind of like more, maybe out of the realm of having kids and stuff, but maybe more gore, make the monsters a little scarier. I mean, I'm not really big on the kid-friendly stuff. I did like Stranger Things, but I kind of liked it more when they got older, truthfully. I kind of found the characters a little bit grating on my nerves when they were younger, and I know they had that Goonies vibe, but I know I watched Goonies when I was a kid, like Ken, and I actually recently watched Monster Squad, and that was awesome. I don't know how I missed that when I was growing up, but I was obsessed with Goonies, but it's along the same lines. And those are great movies. But I think being older, I mean, I'm still a kid at heart, but for some reason, these kids drove me crazy on Stranger Things. And I'm just like, just find the damn kid. You know, we get it. He's missing, not this whole season. Let's find Will. God damn it. But I kind of felt like it was a little stretched thin. But yeah, but for like a remake of like Monster Squad, I would like to see scarier, just really darker. And like I said, I don't know how well that would go over with test audiences and things like that, you know, because if it is going to be centered with kids, there's a lot of people out there that have a hard time seeing kids put in dangerous situations. And yeah, so Ken's raising his hand. So I'm always pushing the envelope with horror, so I would love to see that. I'm R-rated all the way, but I know that may not go over well. But that's just my take on it. And I haven't seen Monster Squad as many times as maybe you all have, so I don't really know how I would really remake it. I mean, I'm so against remaking things that work the first time, so I don't know. I mean, I think for me, I would just like to see it be a little darker and a little more scary.
That's a great point, Lori, because there hasn't been like Goonies and Monster Squad they haven't been remade because they're so great.
Yes.
And they've already they did it. But then you get things like Stranger Things where it's kind of like a reincarnate of something. They take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But yeah, I mean, imagine the outrage that if we're gonna remake Goonies,
Yeah.
what's going to happen. The expectations they got to nail it, and they probably won't satisfy everybody. But yeah, it's a great point. Chris, what are you thinking?
I don't like kids. Never did. I got two. I can't stand them. I'm happiest when they're not around.
I love this guy.
I never liked them. They're dumb, and they're never going to amount to anything. I tell them that every day of their lives.
We love you, Matt. We love you, Matt.
Yeah. Matt and Victoria. Yeah. If I could focus on the dark side a bit, I like that a lot. It's sort of good news, bad news. Kids in very dark movies. Salem's Lot with the kid vampires. Everyone remembers that. The Children, that drive-in movie from the 70s. The bus goes through the nuclear cloud and these children come back and murder their parents. Children of the Damned with Christopher Reeve. I think they all get blown up at the end. They were going to release that movie a few days after Timothy McVeigh, who blew up the daycare center in the federal building. They had to postpone it 6 months. I appreciate that, but most people, including a lot of horror fans, don't want to go anywhere near that. Kids in peril or kids murdering parents. I can do that, but to please me, you might have to sacrifice 80% of the audience. So but that's my feeling on it. Do dark. Why not? I can name a number of instances where it worked, but none of the movies I mentioned, other than Salem's Lot, and people don't even mention the kids in that. I think Stephen King just has his own inertia to him. But Children of the Damned, I think, went nowhere. The Children, I don't think other than Drive-In went anywhere, except for my blog. So like I said, I'm selfish. Please me. I don't care about 80% of the audience. So that's my 2 cents.
I know. I remember you mentioned, really dark movies involving children. Bloody Birthday really messed me up. I watched that about 10 years ago now.
Right.
But again, that's another one that didn't catch on. It wasn't like this big blockbuster, as far as I know. Came out in the early 80s, but yeah, it was crazy. I was just, I'm like a grown adult and I'm like, oh my God, these kids are psychotic. Yeah. But I loved it. it. But yeah, I can see how that may not go over well with most people. But yeah, Chris is over there like, kids are the devil. Yes, let's do it. Let's run with it.
But you think about though, like, as I'm a parent now, and I have 2 beautiful daughters and stuff, and in horror, I know where I know what I'm getting myself into. But if you watch like a real type movie and something happens, it's a little bit different. But horror, I know like what's going to happen and whatnot. And you think about movies where kids played a strange character, like Gage from Pet Sematary type thing. That's scary shit. Because the dad had to make a decision. And Gage is like, no fair. He had to make a decision because he knows that's not his son, but his son's a murderer. You know, it's weird, and I don't know when it's going to change for a society where we can watch scary movies where kids are like, it's not so sugar coated in a horror movie. And if I may, it's like this is a fucking R-rated, borderline NC-17 movie where kids are gonna eat your guts type thing. You know what I mean? But it's believable. It's not like sugar coated. I'd love to see something like that, but at the same time, the way society is, it's like you can't say the wrong thing without getting blown up. So it's gonna take a really brave producer and director, and writer to put something out like that. And Monster Squad's definitely not the movie to do it. And don't do that to Monster Squad. Do it to something else. But I totally get where Chris and Muse are going with that. I'd love to see it.
I can just see it now. Like the kids are all zombies. They're attacking everybody, eating everybody's brains. It would just be, that's a whole new twist.
But even more hardcore than that, though, because we've done the zombie thing with Walking Dead kids and stuff like that, and with the governor's kids and whatnot. But I'm talking about like hardcore shit. Even with the movie we did with Mom, MOM, and that was he was an older kid. He was a young adult, but that was scary in a sense. I want to see something where it gets under my skin, and as Chris said, I leave a theater and I don't think about the movie again. I want to leave the theater and be like, I need to be a better fucking parent. I need to be a good parent so my kid doesn't kill any, or doesn't turn into some kind of creature. So anything like that. I want that movie. Where is that movie at? Horror, find out where the movie is at. We can fund it. I will fund it. I will cash in my piggy bank and fund that movie.
I will be on the lookout for that. And I guess one last thing to kind of remember here is that there's a little bit of that we're kind of in a closed box here, because we're thinking of films that are largely produced and distributed to an American audience. But go to some other countries and they're a lot more looser with what they do with kids, not only kids killing people, but also kids dying. And that's not something that we see a lot in horror, because here they hide it from us, but it's there. It's out there. If you search, it's out there. When I go through the news here in a second, I'm going to recommend a movie that basically blows a bunch of kids away in the early half of the movie. So it's very timely to what we're talking about. And I didn't look at I should have looked at the location, but I'm pretty sure it was not made here. But I think we have to remember who the audience is, and here, and I'm sure Chris has seen some B movies or other movies from elsewhere that have gone a lot further than any movie you will see around here. Even when you look back at, we talked about some of the great French films and how far they go. There was that era there where there were a couple of years where they did a terrific stretch of movies and they went all out crazy, but not just with kids, but just with what they did. So we also have to remember that other places expand the boundaries of what we get here. And with that, I'll jump into the news, make it really quick. Evil Dead, we spoke a lot about that. If you want to see there we go. If you want to see the original and you are able, unlike me, to get out and go to a drive-in, they brought it back to some drive-ins. So check with your local drive-in. They might be showing it. They're also bringing Ghostbusters back. We mentioned that a little while ago. Ghostbusters is going to be in some drive-ins as well. And if you're looking for a new movie on, I believe it's July 3rd, The Relic will be out. That's a new one, and I believe that's following off of The Wretched, which we talked about a month ago or so, which did really well. Haven't seen it, but I would expect big things from that. Evil Dead, the movie that's coming next that we spoke about, got an official title, and it is Evil Dead Rise. And I guess Bruce Campbell ensures us that the franchise is now moving away, and I believe will be out of the cabin in the woods. So we will see what comes next for that. Remake news, because I always got to throw in some remake news. Not totally horror, but kind of a crazy movie. Twister. There's going to be a new Twister. If we remember the famous line with the cow, another cow flying in the air. Yeah, there's going to be another one, and I guess it's going to be a little bit more darker, more destructive, or whatever they're going to do. So that's in the works. And more remake news. It looks like they're trying to set for the new Scream movie to come out in 2021. But I don't really see how that's going to be with everything that's going on. But good luck with them in doing that. Let's see, something that I should have mentioned before. I may have touched on lightly, but the Twilight Zone season 2 is out. Again, it's on CBS All Access. We don't pay for that, so forget that. For the few people out there who have that, and again, Nosferatu on AMC. The season 2 has begun for anybody interested in that who may have missed it, but that is officially out. Some trailers, new trailers that dropped. They dropped a new one for Candyman, so that's interesting. And supposedly Tony Todd's voice can be heard somewhere in there. I don't know. Benny Loves You, interesting one there. The Silencing, The Beach House has the second trailer that will be out on Shudder very soon, and Emulant, which will be out at the end of July. And that movie that I referenced a few minutes ago that blows a bunch of children away early on is called, and I'm going to try to pronounce it right, is Beelzebub. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that will be out on, I believe, some digital outlets, also DVD, Blu-ray, on July 7th, and that stars Tobin Bell. I just watched it today. Pretty good, creepy, cult, exorcism kind of religious kind of theme movie going on there. And yeah, lots of kids dying early in the movie. So it was kind of shocking. And again, that kind of reminds me that, we don't get to see a lot of that. But yeah, I was kind of shocked to see that. But that is going to be my recommendation. Go see some kids get blown away.
Well, you're hardcore, man. I'm really excited about the Evil Dead stuff going on. I got to tell you about my T-shirt, just randomly that you brought that up. So this is probably one of my favorite T-shirts that I own. It's the Ash vs. Evil Dead shirt. I waited 2 hours in line, not to get the shirt, but to have a chance to get the shirt. And you walk through this was at New York Comic Con a few years ago, season 1 of Ash vs. Evil Dead. So however many years ago that was. But you walk through like a set and of Ash vs. Evil Dead. They built like a whole set, and you had to dip your hand into a basket and pull a card out, and whatever the card said was the prize that you won. The first one I won was a chainsaw foam hand. I was like, I don't want this shit. So I went back in, waited another couple hours, and got the shirt, and I was so happy. So I love this shirt. I absolutely love it. It's got like Ash's back, baby, on the back of it. People were offering me money as I won this shirt. I'm like, no way, forget about it. One thing that I wanted to ask you, Horo, as far as horror news goes, I am reading that, is it official that Kevin Bacon is now going to play Freddy Krueger?
I've not seen it official. They keep going back to him and talking about it, and I think some of the news is recycled.
Okay.
But they interviewed him because he's in a new movie called I watched it the other day, You Should Not Leave, or something to that effect. It's brain fart here. But I guess while doing that, he's done suppressors, and I guess somewhere along the line they asked him, because I guess Robert Englund, I think, made reference to it originally. So as far as I know, official, no. But he's considered for it, and there is a lot that I know. This is another one, we talked about some of the properties going through lawsuits. This is another one where Wes Craven's estate is up, and I guess they actually want another movie done. So whether it's a remake or whatever, and we all know Robert Englund really doesn't want to do it. So officially, I guess my answer is officially. I have not heard official, but he is apparently towards the top.
Okay, one more thing in horror news from PromoteHorror.com. Did you get a haircut and did you shave?
Okay, so let's be careful with the rumors here. Be careful with the rumors. My wife tweaked my hair here. She wanted to play around with it, so she did.
It looks nice,
but it has not been cut. I call it my douchebag look.
You look good. You look handsome, man.
I love your hair. I was gonna say something earlier.
Yeah,
but I did shave because we're about to enter summer down here, and we've been spending some time in the pool because that's as far as we can basically go. And so I did shave. So it is clean shaven, and now I can grow it out for like another 10 years because I'm going to be here for God knows how long.
Well, the competition is there for me. So speaking from one handsome guy to another, let's jump into our review of One Bedroom with Chris, the beautiful creature, ZC.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. We're going to talk to Alok Mishra in a little while, and also David Marmer, who directed the movie, and we're going to talk to Naomi Grossman. So what I'd like to talk about now before they come on is a little review of 1BR, or One Bedroom. It's officially 1BR if you look for it on imdb.com, through the perspective of the star who was not with us tonight, Nicole Bryden Bloom, and the sickeningly sweet Brian in this movie, Giles, I think it's Matthew. And it's a fascinating movie on a number of fronts. One is we have a protagonist who we like. Maybe she reminds us of ourselves at an earlier age when we weren't as smart, when we didn't have the experience that we have when we were 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, and nobody wanted to hire us because we were completely worthless and we were stupid. No fault of our own, just no experience. And she has left home to go to California to become a fashion designer, a costume wardrobe artist. And no doubt she's capable, but if you think breaking into acting is difficult, this is something that's a little bit more difficult, believe it or not, and it doesn't pay as well. But it's a labor of love. But we find out early on that she's not only chasing a dream, she's running away from a family situation, which will all be revealed as the movie unfolds. It's not a feel-good story, but she is running away from something. It's kind of unfinished business. It's a sad story. It's a story that didn't end well. And unfortunately for her, it's going to follow her out to California toward the end of the movie. And you'll see that when you watch the movie, and you should watch it. But she comes to LA and a miracle happens. When miracles happen, you need to run because it's just, we've all had them, and 10 minutes later we're brought in for questioning. It's just never a good thing. And so she gets a line on an apartment, too good to be true, puts her name down, and guess what? She lies. This is a morality movie. They're all morality movies. You feel bad for them, but then you remember she lied. I've never lied in my life, and I know you guys haven't either. And you meet people that do, and it's just disgusting. Why would somebody do that? Why would you tell somebody something that is not true? I know the four of us don't understand that, but you see it on film all the time, and guess what? She's going to pay for it. Do you have pets? No. Guess what? She has a cat. This is not going to go well. And we've seen this in movies lately where the little cute little dog or the little cute little cat, usually they miraculously survive and run out of the woods, but not in the last 10 years. They get totally baked. And that's what happens to her cat. But initially, she seems to have a good thing going. She gets in on this apartment. It's a nice apartment. It's in LA, and the neighbors are great. And her neighbor, who lives in number 212, is Brian. Sickeningly sweet Brian. And it's funny. He's a nice guy, and you can see them having premarital sex, maybe a couple scenes up. And the trouble is when we meet Brian, of course, we're all a lot older. And we've seen horror movies before. And I'm thinking, oh, she's going to gut him. He's just a little too sweet. Now, does that happen? Does that not happen? Why would that happen? Because everything's good. They have a barbecue. She actually enjoys it. She meets lots of interesting people, lots of nice people. They look out for each other. What could go wrong? And that's what Rosemary asked when she first moves into this brownstone in New York City. And of course, stuff does go wrong for her. Nothing is as it seems, but as a ominous horror moves into her life, we're also concentrating on what's going on in her life. She's not making it as a fashion designer. She has a temp job, answering phones and doing menial work, and an awful boss that takes advantage of her. And now she's in this apartment, and the neighbors are not only overly friendly, they have a plan for her. And the plan for her does not include her having a life outside of this apartment. Now, they've got to make a move on her. And the scary part of this movie, I maintain, is the fact that we're watching it thinking, we like these guys, meaning the ominous, horrific people. And when bad things happen to them, we sort of feel sorry for them. And we realize we've been seduced. The question is, will this ominous horror that sort of has already seduced us, the viewer, will it also seduce our protagonist, Sarah, played by Nicole Bryden Bloom? And there's something about Sarah, and you'll figure it out by the end. However vulnerable and diminutive she looks, whether it's a look in the eye, there's something about her that's telling us that this horrific force that's moving in on her, they're in for it. They're in for the fight of their lives too. And before the end of this movie, the horrific force is going to get a little bit of a surprise. Now, that doesn't mean they won't prevail, and I won't tell the ending. But when we talk to the producer and a couple of the stars in just a minute or two, we will see what that force actually is and how it manifests itself. There's a little bit of gore, but this is this is like a minor league version of Rosemary's Baby with a bit of a different reveal. And I'm not going to do any more because of spoilers, but 1BR is a terrific movie. It's streaming. I think you can rent it for either $3.99 or $4.99, but you should definitely do it. It's a good take.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. Well done review. I know we don't want to give away too much because it was just released recently, but I watched this movie, and I grew up in Los Angeles where the apartment complex was, and they're very much like there's not a lot of personal space there. You meet your neighbors and whatnot, and you got they all look the same, from the stucco on the buildings and the everything central in the middle of the like almost a hotel, a pool, whatever. And I really liked this film. I thought the actress there, what was her name? The main actress?
Nicole Bryden, what's her last name? Nicole Bryden.
Well, Nicole, she did a well done job because she was very vulnerable. And I was trying to put myself in the situation with my daughters or whatnot, and I thought she was great. This young lady is going to have a great future in acting. I liked it a lot. You were pulling for her through the whole movie, and yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. It was very cultish type thing. A lot of weird things going on, and I give it 2 thumbs up. I loved it. Definitely check it out. It's worth renting. Something different. It's a breath of fresh air. And it's a little bit of a slow burn, but it's like a nerve-wracking slow burn because shit is going to go down sooner or later, and it does not disappoint. And and like I said, when we get to the interview, I wanted more. Muse, what did you think?
Well, I live in an apartment, and we talked about this in the beginning of the show. And so I am definitely the person sneaking their cat into the no pets building. This is me, dude. I am the selfish bitch. Yes. That they called her.
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, who would do that?
I like animals better than people most of the time. I love people though, but I am like, yeah, that's me. I was like, that is so me. And it was funny when she was at that open house for the apartment, they stated that it was no pets, and you saw quite a few people leaving during that time. And she just kind of looked, she was really good at hiding the fact that didn't bother her. Right. But then when the manager said, "Oh, you left the space blank on the application," I go, "Oh, she's lying. She's got a cat, she's got a dog or something." And yeah, most apartments do allow pets though, so that's not really a big deal. But I felt her on that, and that's me like sneaking my cat in. But being deceptive there for sure. But I felt her pain on that. She's like, this is the only person I know in LA. I got to have my cat, somebody to talk to, really. So, but yeah, this is why movies like this are why I'm really weird and reclusive with my neighbors. I am like a cloak type person. Okay. I am like in my house coming out to grab the paper and going back in really quickly. Like I am just like, because people are scary, man. You just don't even know who your neighbors are. You really don't. And movies like this make me even more freaking paranoid. And I love that it really got underneath my skin. We talked about that do that as well. And it was really one of those things where, you hear about stories about cults and things like that. And there are people out here in this world that think that way. And it's not a stretch to think that there are people out there that think we need to reform the way that people see life and the way that people appreciate life and things like that. So for me, it was really kind of terrifying because it's
Yeah.
like I could see this happening. And
Yeah, that's the scary part. Yeah.
yeah, it's like people are this biggest horror of them all sometimes in these
Mhm.
movies. And we see that on TV shows as well. And yeah, I love this movie. It got underneath my skin. It made me more paranoid. Now that I'm going to be checking out future apartments, I'm going to be like really watching what's going on. Like, these people are too nice. I'm getting the fuck out of here,
She's gonna get to that point on the application, like, do you have a pet? And Music's gonna be like, oh shit.
Like,
But
moment of truth.
yeah, right. Like, oh god damn it. But listen, I think one thing I liked about the film, and we'll get to horrors take in a second here. But one thing I liked is you thought it was gonna get like, are they gonna rape her? Are they gonna do like
Yes.
dirty? And they,
Yep.
I'm not gonna ruin it, but it goes a different direction, and it's like you get nervous for her. There's a couple scenes that you think, oh man, I feel bad for her, and she's fucked. But it's great. It's a good movie. Horror. What did you think?
Well, I think it's always scary when you could have Florida Man as your neighbor. I mean, that is pretty bad in itself. But anyway, as far as the movie, I think what you just said really nails it, because it kind of follows a storyline where you're thinking of other horror movies and you're like, oh, well, it could go in that movie that I saw or that movie. But they play it very straight and narrow, and the cult is very strict to, okay, we're going to do it this way and that's it. And you think that it's going to go in a certain direction, but no, the cult is like, no, we're doing it this way. And I think on the flip side is Nicole plays it the same way. She's, you see these movies and you see obvious scenes where things are being tipped off and okay, well, she's going to try to take advantage of this situation, this advantage. You're like waiting for it. And she just plays it like, oh, I'm suckered into this and I have no choice, and goes. And she almost is until, a certain thing happens and okay. And then all the shit hits the fan. But so I think, when you have a movie like this and you can follow along and be like, oh, I've seen that movie. I've seen this movie. Oh, this is, whatever, blah, blah. But then it kind of creates its own path somewhere in that. I think there's a beauty to it. And Nicole really did a great job. Really impressed with her doing in basically her first real full-time lead performance.
Yeah, I'm grasping my hands right now. If you know what I mean. And she's definitely tough as nails. And
Stop it.
but yeah, that part bothered me. I was squirming in my seat, and I'm watching it on my iPhone next to my wife. It's about midnight, and let's just put it this way: this movie was so good. Mondays are hard for me. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work and whatnot. So I woke up Monday morning, went to work, watched the movie last night, and I'm tired. But I didn't want to stop watching this movie, and it was midnight, and I was so into this movie. I was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" That's how good this movie is, if I could put it that way.
Yeah.
So let's get into the interview. We'll be right back, everybody, and sit tight. Okay, we'll just do the ending real quick. Sound
Okay.
good?
Good.
Sorry, we're going late. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2. That's got to be one of the best interviews we've had in a while. It's a lot of fun. And sometimes when we get more than one person that we're interviewing, things go crazy. But just well done. You guys did a great job with the questions. I had a lot of fun. I'm laughing the whole time. Yeah, good stuff. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. They were a lot of fun. Alok, I think I could hang with him and have a beer or 5 with him. Seemed like a real good guy. They seem like regular guys, and boy, I tell you, they did a fabulous job. And I can't wait to see what they got coming up next.
I agree. All right, well, let's land the plane. Great show, guys. Let's start with our shout-outs. Hora, what do you got for this week?
All right. Well, one thing I did is I actually went over to where the scary things are on Twitter, and I said maybe I should be following some of the people that are following the podcast. So maybe some of you out there noticed that Promote Horror is now following you. So I thought that was a good idea. And I also noticed that some people were following me that I wasn't following. So some of you out there have follows. You're welcome.
You've been blessed.
Yes, you have the blessing of promote horror now. Join the evil cult here. See,
There you go.
It's all a cult. And with that, my shout out this week is going to go to Mike Hathaway Jr., which you can find him on Twitter at, and I'm just going to spell it out, SCRAPPA82. And I shout him out because he does a great impersonation of Leatherface. I've retweeted him several times. I've kind of, he says it. I don't take credit for it, but Craig, who I shouted out a couple of weeks ago, does Michael Myers. You've been following along. You've seen those videos.
Funny, very funny.
He's excellent. And long and behold, here comes my Leatherface. So Michael does Leatherface here, and they're friends now. I introduced them. So we have all community. So whoever's doing maybe Freddy or Jason, feel free to let me know, and you can join the club. So that's my shout out. Follow Leatherface or Mike, and spread the horror as always.
All right, Chris, what do you got?
Nothing. I will be in Overland Park, Kansas, my Overland Park, Kansas office next week when we do the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing all my Kansas and Missouri friends. And but as far as shout outs go, boy, I don't got any this week.
I think, you know what, I did want to ask you something. Maybe you could talk about a little bit about the magazine and Emily. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Creators Unite is a cutting edge, sort of out there, off the mainstream type magazine. They focus on a lot of not mainstream stuff. For example, the next issue is going to focus on cannibalism in the movies and as an art form and as a mindset. And we got a nice young, very talented young director on who's just made a couple of 3 cannibal movies in the past 10 years. Going to be talking about him as well. And they also publish my books, which are very erotic, horrific gore fests. And that's something that no mainstream publisher in their right mind would even look at, nor should they. But if you want to see stuff like that, Creators Unite is the way to go. They did maybe 3-4 months ago a fashion issue. And it's not the fashion you see in the Sears catalog. This is some neat, almost artistic stuff that was been created. And it's probably not the type of stuff you'd wear, but to watch it coming down the runway, it's pretty amazing stuff. So think of out of the mainstream, maybe a little bit taboo, not too taboo, but something that if you have to watch Disney stuff with your kids all day, you're going to want to curl up with one of these magazines.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. But we will be involved more with this magazine and promoting it, so you will hear a lot of it. So, Muse, what do you got for us this week?
So I had one particular shout out. I want to say that I did enjoy the interview as well. I mean, I love these guys. I still want to do like a roundtable Trivial Pursuit with all of us. Get some drinks going. I think that would be a blast. I like you said, I could see us hanging out with these guys. They're great. But yeah, my shout out is actually another show that does YouTube live streams run by my friend Patrick Farmer. He's at PM Farmer 10 on Twitter there. That's his Twitter handle. So follow him if you're not. But they do their show is called SPF Scream Stream, and they do a live YouTube feed on every Saturday night at like 9 p.m. They just did a really cool retrospective on the Sinister series, which was really interesting. They do a kind of like a fun trivia segment as well, and it's in between the co-hosts though. So that's they gets pretty funny. They have a really good chemistry as well. And I think they're doing like a watch party on YouTube this weekend on Saturday at 9 p.m. on YouTube. They're watching Intruder. So that's going to be a fun one. It's definitely a great movie, a classic 80s movie to go back. It's in the Danny Hicks recently passed. So they definitely want to watch that one. And they want to honor the life and legacy of Danny. So they're getting together. So it's a lot of fun. They're a great group, and I love watching these guys as well. They're along the same lines. They remind me of us. I think that's why I like them so much. They're a lot of fun, and Patrick is great. I cannot think of the other names of the co-hosts, so I apologize, but they're all great, and they're really a riot. So definitely check them out. They're an SPF Screen Stream on YouTube. There, subscribe, and I think they have a group on Facebook called the Horror Hut. So definitely check them out. They're great, and that's it.
Right on, right on. So, as far as us, I want to just reiterate that we are part of a really great group of podcasters, the Strange Society Network. We are definitely going to re-engage talking about this and maybe do a couple of shows, cross shows with a couple of the podcasts that are on the network, such as True Crime Real Time Pod, great true crime podcast. Another true crime podcast we have is our True Crime Podcast. Misery Loves Garlic Bread, Crash Palace, Harrison Smith's Cinema Podcast, which is excellent. You definitely got to shout that out. I got to give Harrison Smith a personal shout out. Follow him at Harrison Smith 85 on Twitter. This guy is the real deal. He loves just communicating with people. He's the nicest guy. His podcast, his personality in the podcast is totally different from who he is as a person. Just straightforward. I love this dude. Harrison Smith Cinema Podcast. Check it out. We also added 2 more shows to the mix here. We have Behind the Screams Podcast. Now, I listened to the show and I loved it. This guy, Ian, he is from Scotland. He's got a great, beautiful accent. He always has a different co-host on. So check out Behind the Screams Podcast. And also, Anything But the Podcast is one of the new shows. Muse and I have been on this show with Tony Soros Rex. Great guy. Check it out. So follow Strange Society Network, and you can get all those podcasts to listen to. As for us, follow us on all social media, as I said before, where the scary things are. Just type it in the little Google search, and there you are. Follow us on YouTube. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe. And definitely send us messages. Shout out to Killer Casey. She is definitely busy with a lot going on, but we love her dearly and we miss her. And I'm Monster Mash Ken and Chris Zisi, Horo, and Muse. We love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep it scary, my friends.